So why did you choose to go with a pseudonym?
Well, at the time, I was working for a couple of newspapers in Canada, Globe and Mail and the National Post, and I was doing illustrations for the Globe pretty frequently, but I had like an in-house gig at the Post as an information graphics artist. And there was one illustration I did for the Post, because there was like a newspaper war between the two papers, so they did a story about how the Globe was getting a makeover, trying to look cool, and so they got me to do an illustration of a Globe and Mail newspaper box. It's a terrible illustration, in a makeup chair, getting all gussied up, like it's going out for a night on the town. And I got a call from my Globe editor saying, "What are you doing? Like, I have to run an illustration of yours tomorrow, and now I can't because you just did something slamming us." And so I told her, I sent her flowers, first of all, which is a great freelance tip. Always send your editor flowers when you screw up. I told her if I did anything that I thought would like reflect poorly on the paper, I would do it under a pseudonym. And then maybe a couple of weeks later, I was asked to do a newspaper strip for this university paper, and I knew it was going to be like a dark humor strip, and so I had to come up with something. Like, I couldn't do it to Steve Murray. There's no way. But it's funny, so I didn't tell my editor that I did this.
Can I interrupt? Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Murray.
Oh, God. That makes me wildly uncomfortable. I don't know why. So it's funny because my Globe editor, she didn't know about any of this. And then when my comic kind of started to take off kind of locally, she told me, like, there was one night where she was at home and she was brushing her teeth. She had a TV on in the other room, and she just heard my distinct nasally voice. And she went into the other room, and there I was in a cowboy hat with like fake glasses on, talking about my prison comic with the name CHIP ZDARSKY underneath on TV. And she's like, what the hell's happening? And so, yeah, I was outed at that point.
So it just stuck.
Yeah. And so the name CHIP ZDARSKY came from, first of all, I like Chip because the guy who did Peanuts, Charles Schultz, his nickname was Sparky, and I thought that was really hilarious, a man with a child's nickname. And I thought Chip kind of fit the bill, and Chip is short for Charles, so it was like an homage to Peanuts, really. Yeah, I'm known for Peanuts, not penis. And the last name Zdarsky was, so I had a friend named Carmen Albano. I'll just say his full name since we're recording this. And we were roommates, and he was dating this girl named Nicole Zdarsky, and she was so cool, and she was so funny and cute, and like we all loved her. And he broke up with her, just out of like nowhere, and it was for like just this dumb reason. We later learned that it was because he was impotent, and he actually had like a physical blockage, and he was like blaming it on something to do with her because he's a guy and not him. Right. So he broke up with her, and we were all so upset that I actually took the name to memorialize her and their relationship, and to always remind him that he broke up with her. And so
that's a true friend.
And so the weird thing is, like, I didn't think that this was going to be a career. This was just like a one-off.
Right.
And so once I started publishing comics, I reached out to her, and I was like, "Hey, I've stolen your name, and I feel bad. You want to read the comics?" So like every time I get a new comic, I'd meet her for a drink, and I'd give her the comic. And so I met her for a drink, and I gave her the comic, and we had.
Is that a euphemism?
Well, we had a few more drinks. Next thing you know, I'm having an affair with Zdarsky. It was intense. She was a low-level drug dealer that worked for a hotel chain. So she had access to tons of drugs and hotel rooms. And so it was like 6 months of just like, wow. And it was always just a little weird in the back of my head, like, you're a Zdarsky and I'm a Zdarsky. This is very confusing to me.
I didn't think they had that in Canada.
And she is now married with 2 kids in Las Vegas. So that's really nice.
What's her husband's name? It's not Steven, is it?
No. But yeah, so that's the origin of CHIP ZDARSKY.
That's a fantastic origin.
Thanks.
What were your influences when you first started? What was your artistic drawing influences?
Speed. Not the drug speed, though that may have factored into it. I think working at the newspaper, because I worked for the paper for about 14 years. I was still working for it during the first year of Sex Criminals because I didn't know if this comics thing was going to be a thing or not. And because of the newspaper job, I got used to daily deadlines. Like I'd usually get like a story would come in around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I'd have to like draw something about it for like 6 o'clock. So the turnaround was always insane and crazy, or I'd have to write and draw or make a graphic or whatever. And so my style is kind of just like necessitated by the deadline. A lot of that work is really bad, not gonna lie. And so yeah, so it's weird because the influence is basically the deadline. Like it's hard for me to see influence. Other people will come up to me and say, "Oh, this is kind of like a Dan Clowes thing," or "Oh, this is shitty."
No, I'm sorry I said that. I already apologize. I apologize again.
So yeah, so it's hard for me to see the influences. That's more for other people. But all I see is just the fact that I have no time, and so I've got to get the drawing out the door, or Matt will get angry at me.
Well, what about writing in comedic influences?
Probably Kids in the Hall, because I'm Canadian. Kids in the Hall and SCTV. Like, oh yeah, let's give it up for Kids in the Hall. Are there any Kids in the Hall here tonight? No? Yeah, that was my big thing. When I was a teenager, me and my brother would just like religiously watch that show, and my parents were convinced we were gay. Because every time they'd see Kids in the Hall, they're like, "This is like a gay show? Is that what I'm watching?" Which was
Gay meaning happy.
Yeah, which in like the mid-late 80s was like, it was pretty groundbreaking on TV, the kind of stuff they were doing. But they were so supportive. Like my parents actually got, for my birthday, tickets to a taping of the show. So I got to see one of the tapings in like the final seasons. And like, because it's Toronto, like you see the Kids in the Hall all the time. They're always just like hanging out in the street or whatever. And so, yeah, it feels like they're just like buddies of mine, even though I've never actually talked to any of them.
Right.
Yeah, Kids in the Hall is definitely the big one. But yeah, my parents were absolutely convinced I was gay. But they were so supportive of it, of my lifestyle.
Are they still?
Like I had this thing, so I went off to art school, and then I think I came home for like Thanksgiving, and when I'm away at school, I'm missing things at home, and one of the things is our piano, because I like to play piano. And I have
play piano?
A little bit. Like I kind of taught myself in grade 8 to impress a girl, and I just kind of stuck with it. I taught myself how to play New Kids on the Block, She's My Favorite Girl, to get my first girlfriend. Very smooth.
Can you still play it?
No. But yeah, so like I came home for like Thanksgiving, and I was in a bit of a gold lame phase at the time too. So like I had this really shiny top, and I had like a book of like kind of show tunes, and I was playing the show tunes on the piano, and my big burly dad came into the room. He sat down at like a table, and he was like listening to me play. And I was like, Dad never does this. This is amazing. I'm going to put on a fucking show for him. And so I'm just like, hello, my baby. Hello, my darling. And at the end of it, he's like, well, why don't you come on over here and let's have a talk. I'm like, okay. So I just kind of like flounce on over, and I sit down. And my dad was like, so your mother and I have been talking. I'm like, yeah? He's like, we want you to know that no matter what, like, we love you. You know that, right? I'm like, oh, yeah. He's like, but are you gay? I was like, no, I'm not. No.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, yeah. And he's like, no, it's okay if you are. It's okay if you are. Like, we just noticed, you like Kids in the Hall, this gold lame, the piano, art school.
Show tunes.
Yeah, he's going through all the stereotypes, and I'm just like...
Now you're drawing dicks.
And I'm just like, no, I'm not. I'm absolutely not. He's like, it's okay if you are. It's okay if you are. I get it. I'm like, what? And he's like, I get it. Like, I could have sex with a hole in the wall and still, come. Like, that's what my dad actually said to me. I'm like, what?
How old were you?
Well, I'm like 19, I guess, at that point. I'm off to college.
So you've already had your dick in a wall, so you know.
Yeah, so I know it. But my dad just starts explaining, I get it. Some guys, with their muscles and their burly chest and their stubble. Like, he just starts describing these, like, fantasies to me. And I'm like, what are you Is this you coming out to me? So it was a very confusing talk. And at the end, like, I think I convinced him that I was, relatively straight, though college hadn't quite kicked in yet. So there were a few experiences. But yeah, like, it was so funny because, like, he just kept insisting that I was gay and that it was okay, and I kept saying I'm straight and that's okay too. And yeah. And then, I eventually got engaged to a woman who also looked gay. And so my parents were like, this is just doomed. And we broke up 6 months later, and I kept having to tell them, it's not because she's a lesbian and I'm gay. It's not because of that. It just didn't work out, Dad. Was there a question there, or am I just talking about my family?
I sort of feel like you should be paying me for this therapy session.
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we're talking about influences. Have your influences... Yeah. I think. That's what I've got written down. Yeah. So we were there a while ago.
They were somewhere in the vicinity, yeah.
Yeah. Your influences, have they changed? Artistically, you said that your influence was the deadline.
Yeah.
You still have a deadline, but it's a little bit softer. No pun intended.
Yeah, all right.
Sorry.
Like, I found now, like, there was a period where I wasn't really reading a lot of comics, and as soon as I started doing Sex Criminals, I kind of like got back into it just to see what was happening out there. And so there's like artists like Fiona Staples and Chris Samney that I look at their work and I'm just like, that's amazing. Like, it's not an influence in the sense I'm never trying to replicate, but I just look at them and being like, how do they do that? Like, I'll never be able to do that, and I just get sad. So I don't really bother with the influences as a result.
So you started writing more.
So I started writing more, yeah.
So, well, how about writing?
It takes longer for people to realize you're a bad writer.
Does it?
It does. It does. I can look at a picture and immediately go, whoa, that's bad. With writing, you got to read like a few pages, maybe an issue, and kind of think about it for a bit. Like, that wasn't very good. So I feel like I prefer writing.
Yeah. How many issues was Howard the Duck?
That was 16 issues.
Oh, okay. All right.
So nice try. And I quit. I did not get fired, unlike Star-Lord.
How about comedically? What's your influence now?
Now, it's weird because like most of the jokes that I kind of absorb during the day are on Twitter. Like Patricia Lockwood is super funny. She's like a poet. I can't believe I'm just like, oh, you gotta check out this poet, man. She is the fucking best. But yeah, she really is. Yeah, I don't know. I've been obsessed with Chris Fleming recently. He does these videos called Gale. It's a series where he pretends to be a New England housewife. And it's just so good. He's this amazing kind of androgynous comedian who's like so quick that, and it's so poorly shot that there's like a charm to that. Maybe I'm being drawn to things that are poorly made now to feel better about myself,
right?
But that could be it.
Wrong with that.
That could be it, yeah.
If you had to pick one, you can only be an artist, or you can only be a writer.
A lover.
No, it's not on the menu. No one wants that.
If I had to pick one, it'd be writing, because writing is 100 times easier, like without a doubt. That is. So I've done like maybe a dozen different types of art jobs, like architectural renderings, animation backgrounds, editorial illustration, oil paintings. Like I've had lots of art jobs, and comics art is the hardest of all the art jobs. Guaranteed, because you have to know anatomy, you have to know how to draw cars, you have to know architecture, you have to know cinematography, design, and you have to like somehow do it all on one page multiple times. Like, it's insane, the kind of workload and what it takes to draw a comic. So Sex Criminals takes 7 weeks for me to illustrate, because I'm also compulsive, so I have to color it and ink it and letter it and do all that stuff. But a script will take me 4 days. So just in terms of like a labor involved, like writing is a lot easier. So I definitely enjoy the writing. Yeah, it's great. The only downside with the writing is that that's where they. It's funny, like you didn't know Declan Shalvey, who does like the art cred hashtag online. Like he's always upset that artists don't get enough credit, and I'm just like, I do not want that credit, frankly. Like when the reviews come in, if the review is a bad review, it's almost never about the art. Like the art doesn't change that much. Like if somebody didn't like my work on issue 1 of Sex Criminals, they're not going to like it by issue 20, and vice versa. If you liked it in issue 1, you'll probably like issue 20's art. But the story can go wherever. Like you can agree or disagree with like directions that the narrative arc takes, where characters go. So yeah, like if I read a review of Sex Criminals and like somebody has an issue with that particular issue, it's all on the writer. Like that's the thing. Like no one's gonna be like, Chip really fucked it up this month. I'm like, well, you know, if you feel that way, then you also believe I fucked it up every month before because almost nothing has changed. So yeah, so the downside to writing is the fact that you have to be, you end up being a lot more mindful of the critiques and the reviews of it, whereas an artist can kind of just like tune that out. Like an artist is happy if they get a mention in a review, like, hey, the art was good this month, great, ta-da.
How do you ever really separate the two? When you're drawing, are you thinking about the story? You know, when Matt gives you a script, are you critiquing the script as you draw it, or when you're writing and you start to get pages in, are you critiquing the art, saying I would have made a different choice?
Well, with Sex Criminals, like straight away from issue 1, we had a relationship where we would both discuss story. Which is very different from a Marvel comic. Like Marvel, there's such a division between what somebody does. So I get a lot of like feedback from Matt on the art, and he gets feedback from me on the story, and it feels more like a collaboration. Like we don't have credits in the book. Like it just says Matt and Chip. Like it doesn't say Matt writer, Chip artist. Though the assumption obviously is that I'm doing the drawing and Matt's doing the writing. But so much of the look of Sex Criminals has been influenced by what Matt has kind of like shown me or given me, and a lot of the
like sexually.
Yes, yeah, no, truly. And a lot of the story elements come from my life, or notes that I've given Matt on individual issues. Whereas Marvel, it's very separate, and I had to learn super quickly to get rid of the idea of the visual in my head. Because like the first issue of Howard the Duck that Joe did, Joe's a great artist, but when I got the layouts back, I was like, that's not how I would do it. And in some cases, Joe did it a lot better. In some cases, he didn't make a decision that I would have made. And I'm like, do I talk to him about it? Do I tell him to change the angle of the shot? I'm like, no, chill out. It's fucking Howard the Duck. It's Marvel. Joe knows what he's doing. And after that point, I stopped doing the layouts in my head and just kind of like just being pleasantly surprised when the artwork would come in. So yeah, so it's yeah, I've only drawn for Matt, that's the thing. So I only know how I work with him, which is very collaborative. So I don't know how it would work if I drew for, I don't know, like Gail Simone or someone else, like whether or not that relationship would have those kind of divisions that you kind of normally think about when you think of Marvel DC stuff. So I don't know.
Well, what was your first paying gig in comics and in comic books?
So besides the gay porno,
yeah, we talked about that. I thanked you. I paid you.
Besides that, Vampirella, actually. There was this weird period where Vampirella came out as a magazine, and the editor of that tapped into a lot of kind of indie comics people. I think it was one of Becky Cloonan's first gigs was a Vampirella comic, and so was mine. I was doing my own comic called Monster Cops at the time, which was an all ages thing that I could give to kids, and unlike Prison Funnies or later Sex Criminals. And yeah, the editor there really loved Monster Cops, and she wanted me to do a crossover with Vampirella. So my first paying gig was actually using my own characters meeting Vampirella, and it was this weird storyline where turns out her and Dracula went on a date once, and it didn't go very well, and it's later revealed that it didn't go well because she was on the date and she got upset at the menu in the restaurant because she doesn't know how to read. So I revealed that Vampirella doesn't know how to read. because she was from Draculon and she landed on Earth and she has no chance to learn to read, but she was really flustered by that, and yeah, and Vampirella signed off on it. Like the magazine was like, okay, yeah, Vampirella can't read, all right, and Dracula, the Wolfman, and Frankenstein, who are cops, teach her to read by the end. That's all right, that's great. So yeah, I was super excited about that because like getting money for making comics was amazing. Yeah.
Did you cash that first check, or did you keep it and frame it?
Oh, it's very poor.
Yeah.
It was very poor. Yeah.
Well, how
I tried to cash it twice. Like, yeah, I needed money.
Didn't work?
No.
What about your first Marvel check? I know it's a dream for a lot of people when you're a kid to work for Marvel.
It's surreal. It's not like. See, at that point, I've been doing Sex Criminals for long enough that you get the Marvel check. You're like, why is this so low?
They screwed up the exchange rate,
yeah.
Chip.
The first Marvel gig I did was like a 2-page gag strip. They had a crossover series called Original Sin, and they had an anthology book called Original Sins. And Will Moss, the editor there, he remembered Monster Cops. So he used Monster Cops as the excuse to get me to write and draw like a 2-page gag strip. And I kind of assumed that would be my only Marvel work ever, so I just threw like tons of characters into it, like just filled those pages with jokes. I think it was like 16 panel pages of gags. And yeah, and so that was my one shot at it. I did it. I got that check that says like Marvel Worldwide Entertainment. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. But yeah, it may have felt different if that came before Sex Criminals, but Sex Criminals, well, there's two things. Like Sex Criminals was like life-changing for me on like every level, and also it created this new best friend for me, Matt, and I learned so much about like the industry from him that I already kind of felt like I'd been through it. It's like somebody describing war. Like nonstop, and then you go to war, you're like, this feels familiar. Not that Marvel is at war. Are we recording this still? But like I know the landscape there, and I know the feeling of getting into Marvel and having this weird kind of new life within a company. And I knew that feeling before I got in there. So getting in there was like, okay, that's fun. All right, I know the pitfalls and I know the benefits from this, and you know, I'll just always remind myself that my full-time job is Sex Criminals. Like the writing of those books never interferes with Sex Criminals. Like I write Marvel books in the evening before bed and on weekends. Like that's kind of like that's my time for writing those things. So Sex Criminals is still the 8-hour, 10-hour day job. So yeah, it kind of feels like this weird part-time gig, no matter if I'm doing Howard the Duck or Spider-Man. Weird.
Well, what are your goals beyond that? I mean, Sex Criminals would have to be a finite series eventually.
What?
Yeah?
Yeah, that's the tricky part, because I wasn't used to working at the newspaper afforded me to no longer have freelancer anxiety, which I now have fully and completely. So I'm always thinking, like, what's going to be next? And, you know, Matt and I have talked, like, whether we would do something after Sex Criminals, if we would do something together again in the same vein, like him writing, me drawing, or if we would just co-write, somebody else would draw, or I'd co-write it and draw it, or just go our separate ways and find new loves. And I don't know. I've got a bunch of ideas, and I also kind of recognize that Marvel, there's a finite lifespan for creators at Marvel. Some of them don't know it, which is unfortunate. but history has proven that, yeah.
Well, I need to text Brian Michael Bendis that you guys.
Well, yeah, except for Brian Michael Bendis. But yeah, so you know, you don't get too heavily invested in one thing, and you kind of like generate ideas for what can come after. I think I'm in a good enough position that, like, if Sex Criminals ended and then I just did kind of my own book or whatever, I'd be able to probably survive off that, and that would be nice. And I do that until people are like, "You're old and irrelevant. Why are you making comics?" Oh well, we'll see. And yeah, I just don't want to die poor and in the gutter, as all freelancers and comic book people end up doing. It's sad, but it is kind of true. Like, you know, we have the Heroes jar at our tables where people can donate to Heroes, and Heroes take care of older creators. And I love that charity because I'm going to use it one day. You know, you still.
That's your retirement plan?
That's my retirement plan. You know, there's tons of creators that created characters that are in movies, and they're living in their trailer parks and like just getting by, and it's sad and unfortunate. And I don't want to end up like that, and I don't want my friends to end up like that. So, yeah, sorry to bring you down.
Yeah, I'm sad.
Yeah, I know.
Speaking of being sad, you know, this room here is, everyone in the room is here to meet you. So they're sad. They're here waiting for the next panel. Oh, it's like a sold-out panel. We were just like sitting here. Well, I mean, I was woefully disappointed meeting you as much as these people probably were. Do you have any stories like that as a fan meeting someone and being disappointed? You know, they say never meet your heroes.
Well, the first comic convention I went to was like in 1992, I think, 93. Me and a buddy, like, you know, it was our first time kind of getting away from home and going to the big city and doing a comic convention, and we were super excited, and we both had two people we wanted to meet. Mine was Jill Thompson. I was a huge Sandman fan, and she was going to be there, and I was just like, I'd watch interviews with her on there was a TV show in Canada that focused on comics, and she'd been on that. I was like, oh, Jill Thompson, she's the best. And my friend Ben wanted to meet this other artist, and I'm not going to name the artist for reasons you'll discover later. And he was like this young hotshot, and he was doing like some Marvel work, and he was pretty cool stuff. And so we got there, and like our first stop was this guy, and my friend Ben went to meet him. My friend was, you know, kind of flamboyant and weird, and this artist just like treated him like dirt. Like I was just standing there watching this happen, like this is horrible. Like he was like this cool guy, like he was sitting on his chair like this.
We call that Sterankoing now.
Sterankoing, yeah, he was totally Sterankoing. And, you know, he was young and he was cool and he didn't give a shit about anybody, and, like, he thought he was hot shit. And my friend Ben was just trying to impress him. And this guy was there with his buddy, and they were just, like, mocking him, like, making fun of his outfit, like, everything about him. And I'm just watching this. I'm like, oh, my God, this is heartbreaking. I was just picturing me meeting Jill Thompson and having the same thing happen. And so we go away from that. My friend's kind of like shaken up by that. And I get in line to meet Jill Thompson, and the closer I'm getting to her, I'm just like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? What am I gonna say? I had like Sandman t-shirts for her to sign and stuff. Like I'm just like, You have to picture me at the time. I had like a black trench coat and hockey hair. It was a weird Canadian look where I was like,
that's a mullet for all of you Americans.
Yeah. It wasn't quite goth. It wasn't quite hockey jock. It was bad. And so I get up to her and like I get her to sign stuff, and I show her some sample pages, and like we're talking, and she's like super nice, and you know, picture I'm like 18. And I go, yeah. So what are you doing tonight after the show? Do you want to grab dinner? You want to grab dinner with me? Maybe. And she goes, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, swing on by the table like 6 o'clock. I should be wrapped up by then. I'm like, yeah, okay. And I walk away with my friend. I'm just like, holy shit, I've got a date with Jill Thompson. I'm like, you had to see me. Like, I was probably the size of your daughter. I was just like this tiny man, again with the hockey hair and just like teen stash. It was bad. And so my friend was like, this is amazing. And my friend was like, I gotta go back to like that artist and like, I gotta give it another go. I'm like, all right. So we go over and he tries to, you know, impress this guy again. The guy's not having any of it. So my friend pulls out the only thing he's got, which is, so something cool just happened. So my friend here just got a date with Jill Thompson. They're gonna go out tonight. And the artist is like, oh, we did, eh? Really? I'm like, well, you know, I'm pretty hot. And so we leave, and like as we leave, I see him, and he gets up, and he walks over to Jill Thompson, and they start talking. I'm like, this is not good. And so later on, I go up to her, and she goes, "Oh, so and so just reminded me that there's like a dinner with the organizer tonight that I have to go to, so I have to take a rain check on that." I was like, "Oh, that's fine, that's fine." Flash forward 10, 15 years, and myself and my buddy, we started a comic studio in Toronto with Cameron Stewart and Kagan McLeod called the Raid Studios. And we're there, and the phone rings, and my buddy from back then, he answers it. It's that artist. He's looking for a space in a studio, and he was asking my friend if there are any spaces available. So my friend got to go, "No." And hang up on him. Like, that's so great. Like, how often does that happen? And then,
He was polite about it, though, because you're...
Yeah, because we're Canadian.
Yeah.
But you can tell. And so later on, we saw this other artist at a convention, and my friend Ben went up to him, and he said, "Yeah, I'm in the studio, and, sorry, we don't have any space, and I actually have a story to tell you." And he tells him the story about meeting him. And the guy was like, "I was such an asshole back then. I'm so sorry." He was like, "I was like 22. I was like in art school, and I had a Marvel job, and I thought I was like king shit, and I didn't know how to deal with any of it, and I apologize." So he got an apology out of him all those years later. But yeah, man, how satisfying is that? Just be like, "No," click. And I've been married to Jill Thompson for 10 years now. No, the story was revealed to her. She came by the studio with Heidi McDonald, who does the beat. And everyone in the studio was just waiting for her to walk in so they could just tell her the story. She doesn't remember it, obviously, because who would? It was mildly embarrassing. Yeah.
So she still hasn't gone out to dinner with you?
No, it was weird because we were two of the only North American guests in October in Moscow, and we hung out for a bit, and I was just like, should I ask her out? I'm pretty much married now, but I feel like I've got to bring this full circle, but no, I don't think we even brought it up. What happened all those years ago, we just had a bit of horseradish vodka or whatever, and that was it.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, it sure was. Not a fan. Yeah. So yeah.
Let's give the fans a chance. Who has a question for Chip? No one? Over here.
Yeah. Yes. So, yay. As soon as issue 5 wrapped up, I gave Kagan the script issue 6. And that was a year and a half ago. He's taking his goddamn time. And it's tricky because I draw sex criminals. I totally get it. He just doesn't. It's so hard. He can make $1,000 doing a spot illustration of a yoga pose for a magazine, or he can make half that doing 7 illustrations on the page featuring multiple characters that have to be consistent with backgrounds and tell a story. And I think it's hard for him, with a family to be yeah, that's where I need to put my time. So I think it's been hard for him to kind of get back up to speed. But he's shown me pages. Pages are getting done, and he's got assistants helping him out. So the only trick is we have to get at least 3 or 4 issues done before we solicit it. So it won't be until the new year if he manages to keep the pace up. But yeah, I love Kaptara. It's just the stupidest book, and it makes me so happy. And his drawings are amazing. They make me laugh so much. So yeah, fingers crossed. Anyone else?
In the back.
What?
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I beat you to the
Chip's in
punch.
charge. You're next. Go ahead. Yeah.
Does your family read all of your comics to this day?
My parents read Sex Criminals.
How did you explain that to them? Mom,
It
guess
was-
what?
Well, it was easy to explain to them in the sex club where we had our launch.
Right.
We basically rented out this 3-4 floor sex club in Toronto, and Matt flew in, and he got his nipples pierced on stage while I read erotic poetry dressed as Garfield. It was so hot in there. We filled it to capacity. There was 300-400 people in this place. And at one point, Matt wanted my mom to come on stage and hold his hand while he's getting his nipple pierced. And so I was like, "Is my mom out there? Mom, no. Oh, she's on she's on the third floor, the fuck floor." Okay, my parents are no strangers to sex clubs, like guaranteed. I did a story for the newspaper years ago. I went with a reporter, this guy, to a nudist resort in Ontario. And it was like an undercover thing. Like, we weren't revealing we were reporters. And the idea was it's a family-friendly nudist resort. And we got there, and we checked into our room, and we turned the TV on. It was just porno. And then the rest of the weekend was just like avoiding threesomes and so many awkward situations and stopping terrible acts from happening to other people too. Like, it was intense. There was one point where I was in the hot tub with the other reporter, and there was this older couple in there, and this young woman who just like came to the nudist resort, just fresh off of a breakup, and she was going to go with her buddies, and none of her buddies came, so she got like really drunk in the middle of the day, and it was like not a pleasant sight. And so we were all kind of talking. And I was talking to my reporter friend, and we turn around, and the older couple's making out with this young woman, and I'm like, oh my god! And like, my friend was like, "All right, I'm out of here." And he gets up and he takes off, and I go, "No, you can't go. You can't leave me here." He's like, "Well, why can't you join me?" I'm like, I can't get out of the hot tub. My friend was like,
My daughter doesn't understand.
Yeah,
Can you
that's fine.
explain that?
And the reporter was like, "Well, I'll see you back at the room." And so I just had to like sit there, because like, look, I become aroused at the drop of a hat, a sexy hat, and like no matter what the visual is in front of me, it's still doing something to my body. And so I had to like sit there and just kind of look around, think about the scenery while this was unfolding, and so I could get up and exit the hot tub. And like later on that night, we were at the bar. And the nudist resort bar is really weird, because it's mostly just people, like, it's getting a little chilly out, so they put on a shirt. So it's like just a bunch of guys walking around with their manhoods hanging out. And I remember that the girl was still there, and she was even drunker. And one of the guys just started hitting on her like really hard. And so I stepped in, and I'm just like, I think she's had enough, and like, you need to like back off. And this guy was like, "Who do you think you are, coming in as an outsider here and telling me what to do?" And I'm like, "Look, you are not going anywhere with this woman. Like, you're done." And then my buddy came in, and he had my back, and the thought went through my head, I'm like, I'm about to fight a naked man. Like, I'm about to throw down with this dude.
Was that arousing also?
And then I got aroused, and I had to go in the hot tub. So it was like, so we were able to like get her out of the situation and like escort her back to her room, which turned out to be windowless, which was just like the saddest thing, just putting this drunk, naked woman in a bed and going, "Bye," just kind of closing the door, like, "Oh shit, you're gonna die in here." Long story short, we get on the road the next day to get back home, and my phone rings, and it's my mom. And I'm talking to her, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" She's like, "Oh, good. Where are you at?" I'm like, "Oh, you won't believe this. I'm at," I tell her the name of the news resort. She's like, "Oh, your father and I went there years ago. Didn't like it. It was a little dirty." And I was like, "Does she mean like physically dirty, or was it?" So I had no follow-up questions for her at all, because they had like a nudist phase when I was a teenager. They had like a nudist motorbike phase, not at the same time, but like they would get on their motorbike and they'd take off to nudist resorts and leave my brother and I at home. And again, long story short, they're fans of sex criminals.
Perhaps an inspiration even.
They're super proud of it, and like they show all their friends, and they've got like a big sex criminals print in their kitchen, and like it's great. Like, I love it. My wife has read 3 issues, and she's like, "I get it." So it's a little weird that my parents are really into it, and my wife is just like, "Yeah, comics." Yeah, I love my mom and dad.
The gentleman in the back.
If you could write anything and they'd let you write whatever you wanted, what would you want to write?
Ooh.
Matt wants you to say sex criminals. He just texted me.
Yeah. There's nothing that kind of stands out. Like Spider-Man probably would have been my answer. Now I'm writing Spider-Man, so that's
They
weird.
didn't ask you to draw it?
No, they did not.
Why?
Yeah, beyond that, like I've got an itch to do kind of a couple of Batman stories, but they're the kind of stories that would never be publishable at DC, which is unfortunate. Yeah, it's a tricky one because like you kind of learn quickly when you start working on these books. Like Howard the Duck was like my way to scratch all those itches, because in issue 1 I put She-Hulk in there and I put Spider-Man in there. Like nobody asked me to do that. I'm just like, you're gonna cancel this after 1 issue. I'm gonna write Spider-Man and She-Hulk. And that's that. And so over the course of those 16 issues, I got Captain America in there, Daredevil, Silver Surfer, Galactus. Like I just kind of threw in what I wanted to write, and so I kind of checked off all these boxes really quickly to get it out of my system. So now it's less a matter of like what characters am I dying to write, as it is like what stories do I want to tell. So Marvel will often pitch books to me, and like I've turned down maybe 6 or 7 titles that Marvel has asked me to write. And it's always just because of like, I think about it and I think, well, do I have a story to tell here? And if I don't, then I say no. It doesn't matter how high profile or low profile it is. It's always like, oh, like, will I be doing a service to the character and service to the readers by actually doing this? Or am I just doing it because I love the character? You can love the character and have no stories to tell. I love The Flash. And I was asked to pitch on The Flash. I was like, oh, The Flash, that's like my favorite hero. And I sat there, I'm like, stories about guys who run fast. And I couldn't come up with a good one. I came up with like a couple of fun little bits that might make interesting stories, but I didn't even get back to them. I was just like, there's nothing. I got nothing. Even though I love The Flash, like I grew up reading it, I watched the show, but I'm just like, yeah, I don't know if I have, at least not yet, the story to tell. So yeah.
What are your aspirations beyond comics, or is this it? Is this where you want to be?
I don't know, because like most of my kind of career has just been doing like dumb shit, and sometimes it works out and it's fun. Like
It's not all dumb.
I'd like to make a movie. I think that would be fun. I'd love to write a TV show. That would be interesting. Yeah, I kind of want to act too. I think that would be fun. I did like a movie in Toronto a few years ago, and I enjoyed it. And it was it was called No Hard Feelings, and it was like this indie mumblecore style movie, but it got like played on airplanes. Like I was on an airplane and I could watch the movie I was in. I'm like, that's weird. That's fun.
Who's that handsome fellow?
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Like I just want to kind of enjoy myself, and hopefully other people enjoy the stuff that I make. I wouldn't mind running one of these comic companies one day. I think that'd be fun. So I'm coming for you, Axel. That's a great way to get that job. Threaten the guy who's got the job.
How do you work to improve your storytelling? Not implying you need to, but but you need to.
A lot of it is just like I don't enjoy movies or TV shows or reading novels anymore because I'm studying them so much. Like it's really hard for me to actually like get lost in a thing now, because I'm kind of like seeing the tricks and like, why is this working? Why is that not working?
You see how the sausage is made?
Yeah, kind of. So yeah, I've limited my love of entertainment ever since I started writing, but I think it's also kind of helped me to become a better writer. Hopefully, I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily being shown in the work, but maybe. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite TV show, or you just done
Veep,
with-
Veep probably. It's the one that makes me laugh the most. Yeah, I love that show. But again, like I'm watching it. I'm like, how are they like after 6 seasons with her? How are they able to
Right.
like still kind of keep it fresh and interesting? And like, especially with a rotating cast of characters, like I think a lot about team books. Like if I was going to do an X-Men book or whatever, like how would that work? Like how do you have a book that has enough focus on everybody in which it gels and they move towards a common goal while having their individual storylines? Like that's a fascinating thing to me. And you know, I watched Matt, like I sat down with Matt yesterday in his hotel room and we were planning out the next 2 arcs of Sex Criminals, and I kind of watched the way he works. Like he's got this big book with like, it's all gridded out, so he's got like category, like columns for characters and where characters need to go and how characters cross over and interact. Like it's a very visual thing for him to see a story kind of take place. And like most of my learning to write was from Matt, because they're the only scripts I've ever read are Matt's scripts. So watching him like yesterday kind of gave me ideas. Like, okay, like if I end up doing a team book at Marvel or something, like I'm gonna have to really keep this in mind, because up until now it's easy enough to navigate like Star-Lord or Howard the Duck or even Spider-Man. Spider-Man's a bit more complicated, but still you've got the primary character and just a few secondary characters to worry about. But yeah, once it becomes a team book, it becomes something different. So.
Do you see a story first? Do you see it visually, or do you hear it? When you're creating, which comes first?
I think it's different every time. It's less visual now, for sure. Like I've like after Howard the Duck, I'm just like, okay, like it's usually you just find like one sentence that kind of like gives you your starting point. Like, what if this happened to Spider-Man? And then, like the way I usually work is I'll write down like the initial idea, and then I'll kind of like on big paper, 18 by 24 paper, and then I'll like kind of like do these like lines coming off of it, and like what happens here, what happens there, what does this mean? Like by the end, you got this like weird map, and you kind of go through and you kind of figure out which pieces will actually fit together and become a cohesive story. So it was easier. Like I used to do it a lot for when I was doing like something like Prison Funnies, because a lot of it would just be jokes. I'd write down a scenario and then all the jokes that could come out of it, and then you kind of form the story. But with something like Marvel Comics, the story has to come first, and you have to figure that out. So yeah, I don't know if that answers it.
It does. It does
All
answer.
right, good.
Who else has a question?
Maybe I haven't heard of it, but do you have any role for the Sex Criminals TV show? Do you know any updates on the show?
You're looking at John. No. Can you imagine a 41-year-old bearded? Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, that would be acting. That's for sure. It's funny when we first signed the deal with Universal. I kind of told everybody involved that I don't want to be involved. Like the comic takes up all my time, and I think in the back of my head too, I was thinking like if the TV show comes out and it's great, then I could be like, yeah, it's based on my stuff, no big deal. And if it tanks, I'm like, I had nothing to do with that. But as it kind of gets closer, I'm like, well, maybe I should actually play a part in this, because if I do want to like broaden my horizons and try new things, I should try this. I should try, co-writing it with Matt, or being in the writer's room. The therapist, Doc, is based physically on me, so I would like to audition for that role, which would be awesome. Yeah, one of the downsides to working in comics versus what I was doing before with newspapers is there was something new every day that was happening. Stories breaking, weird things that they would send me to do. So there's a lot of variety, and now I'm finding I have no variety in my life. Like, people are like, wow, you do comics, that's great. I'm like, yeah. I go out to my studio, and I sit down, and I work. I don't talk to anybody, and then I go to sleep. And that's every day. So now I'm looking at this as an opportunity to add some variety to my life, and maybe go out there and actually, like, be a nuisance on the set.
So do you have any like updates from after? I would assume you would have something.
The update right now is that there is an active bidding war. War always seems like it's too much. A bidding game between outlets for for actually like showing the TV show. Because like right now, Universal has the rights to it. It's obviously not going to be on NBC, which means it has to land somewhere else. You know, so it's like either Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or AMC or Showtime, like something like that. And so yeah, it's in a position right now. I don't believe anything until it happens. Like I get updates from Matt every like couple of weeks on it, and he gets updates from like his agent, and it feels really close. Like we're in the home stretch of finally deciding who we're gonna make the show with, but yeah, I just do not believe it until it actually is in front of me. Yeah, unfortunately. Anyone else?
Right here.
How did you meet Matt Fraction?
Never have.
Just saw you like hug.
What? Oh my God. I met Matt the same way that Matt's wife met Matt, which was on the Warren Ellis Forum back in like 1999, probably. It was kind of the first spot online where comic readers and comic creators could kind of interact. Kind of a really basic kind of message board setup. And it's astounding how many people from that message board work in comics now. Jamie McKelvey and Kieran Gillen were both, you know, on that. I don't think they'd even like thought of Phonogram at the time. Kelly Sue, Matt, Sam Humphries, Andy Curry, who's like an editor at DC now. Yeah, it's crazy. There's probably like 2 dozen people. Like there's one guy on there, Dan Evans, who's just like, oh, this guy on there, you know, make some jokes now and then, you know, kind of funny guy. And now he's like running DC Entertainment or something. Like he's like in charge of like all the TV shows. I'm like, what? Like this is nuts. But yeah, that place, Matt was kind of starting out. He was kind of like pushing some of his independent stuff, and I was starting out. And we both kind of like gelled online. Like we both got each other's senses of humor. And for me, it was just like a treat watching him kind of go through these phases, like of like doing his like independent books and then getting like Punisher War Journal at Marvel. I was like, that felt like I got the job. I was so excited for him. Like, oh my God, you got a Marvel book. That's amazing. I think I was more excited about that than when I actually got a Marvel job. You know, and him and Kelly Sue met there, and they got married and had kids, and like you kind of watch all this come out of this like weird internet community, and it was awesome. So yeah, we'd always just kind of kept in touch after that, and we both loved each other's work, and yeah, just kind of out of the blue, I emailed him just saying we should just do something dumb. Like I don't know what. Like we did a music video together before for a public radio station for a fundraiser for the band Fucked Up, the punk band in Toronto. And so I did all the key illustrations for it. We got somebody to animate it, and Matt wrote the script. And so that was the first time we actually kind of worked together because we both loved the radio station. And then, yeah, so I emailed him, like, we should just do something. And I pitched him a really bad idea, and then he pitched me Sex Criminals. And I was on the road at the time. I was on a train trip for work, and that whole train trip was just us emailing back and forth, like, coming up with characters and what this would mean and where the story would go and how what would time look like stopped, like how does it affect light and things like that. And it was like a really fun, like I don't think I'd been energized that much. Like I was getting tired of my newspaper job at that point, and so this gave me this boost of energy just to do something with a guy that I really liked that would not last. That would be like 3 issues, and no one's going to buy a comic about a couple who have sex and stop time and rob banks. That's just not a thing people want, was what we thought. So yeah, and like, you know, and our conversations were, when we were kind of like finishing up issue 1, were along those lines. We're like, this is a lot of fun. This is a book for us, and no one's going to buy it, and we're probably going to have to talk to Image to get them to advance us money in order to finish it enough to put out 1 volume, and we'll have done a book together. That'll be fun. And then and then it hit, and it was weird and big, and I've been to Moscow with Jill Thompson. It's weird.
Does Jill know you were there?
Come on.
Right here.
Since you like writing so much, have you written any just short stories, novellas, writing?
Well, I wrote. Okay, here's a weird one. Before Sex Criminals came out, I was writing these things I call them the one-page series, where I would just write like you're in the middle of a novel, which is like an excerpt. And the first one was a porno called "The Petals Falls Twice," and I typed it up, made it look like it was something from a book, posted online, and it took off. And like people were doing audio recordings, someone did animation of it. Like it was like this weird thing. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know. And then I got calls from Hollywood producers. Fox Animation contacted me because they're like, yeah, we've been passing this around the office and we love it. And then we found out you can draw. So do you want to pitch an animated show? I'm like, okay. So I fly to LA and I'm like meeting with like the guys who do like Simpsons and Family Guy and pitching them weird stuff. And they're like, we're thinking more like a thing about a family and a guy. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go. So yeah, I did that, and I did a whole bunch of those. I did like maybe 20, like just kind of making fun of different genres. And I had a literary agent in Toronto, and she took me on with the idea of doing a graphic novel about Canadian history, which I botched horribly. I had to return the advance. It was not a good time in my life. And she kept saying, like, whenever you have something, come to me. And so I was like, well, I have this, which is just like single pages of novels that don't exist, and most of them are dirty. I just kind of handed them to her, and I just didn't hear back. And when I finally like poked her, I was like, hey, well, what do you think? And she's like, this is the first time I've ever actually had to say this to a client. I do not know what to do with this. It's like, oh, okay. So that was it. I just stopped talking to her. And she did say at the time, she's like, are you working on anything else right now? I'm like, well, I'm illustrating a comic about a couple who has sex and they stop time, but I don't have to use you for that. Don't worry, it's comics. And she's like, oh, okay. That was my last conversation with her. And then like 3 years later, I'm at, I think it was the launch for Just the Tips at one of the comic shops in Toronto, and she lined up with everyone to meet me. And she gets to the front, and there was an article in the newspaper, I think just that week, that talked about how Sex Criminals had sold over 100,000 copies at that point. And so she got to the front line. She's like, hey, what is this? I thought I was your agent. I'm like, I didn't need you for that. And like, you don't know what to do with me. So I did a dumb sex book, and this is what happened. So maybe next time you should try and do something with me. And so she stayed my agent for a little bit after that, but like, but then she just started like kind of pitching me to like TV and film companies for things that like they didn't even know my books. I'm just like, why? I don't want to waste my time with this. And it got me angry to the point where I just like I quit, and so I have no agent now. But
What does angry Chip look like?
I quit. So. Yeah, so I like doing stuff like that, and I've written kind of the beginnings of like novels, and I have a novel. Well, I tried to write a Harlequin romance. I want to write one about like a sexy cartoonist named Chip moving to a small town. And so I wrote the first like few chapters. It was a hard style to emulate. Like I wanted to be an actual Harlequin romance, and a lot of very descriptive, and I did the first few chapters, and I sent it to my ex-wife, who was like my best friend, and she wrote
Jill
back.
Thompson.
Yeah, she wrote back, and she said, "I love the font choice." And so I just took it and put it in my drawer, and just went back to work. She says she doesn't remember saying that to me, but I remember it. Yeah, so I have ideas for things, but it's a matter of just kind of finding the time, and something like a novel's pretty daunting. I've started a few, and it's like, phew.
You're not writing under, so you're not writing as Chip Tangle?
No, I've been asked that a few times, and that is not me, though I can very much see how people think it is. Yeah.
All right, last question right here.
Yeah, is there a writer, living or dead, that you would love to have drawn for or to draw for? And conversely, is there an artist that you would love
That's tricky. Writer.
Chip Zdarsky.
No, I hate that guy. Yeah, writer is tricky. I kind of want to do my Sandman love, bring it full circle, and do something with Neil Gaiman. That would be amazing. I'd love to do just like a jokey Merv Pumpkinhead story or something. That would be awesome. Yeah, in terms of artists, like I've been blessed. Like I told myself going into the Marvel stuff that I would not work with artists I don't like, because I see that happen all the time, and it infuriated me when I was like a reader of comics. Like, you'd be reading a comic, all of a sudden there's like this lousy artist on a book, and you're like, what? Like, oh, I love the writing, but I hate the art. It sucks, and I didn't want to be that. So I've been blessed with amazing artists like Joe and Chris and like Adam now. And Goran Parlov did like the backup in Spider-Man. It's like one of my favorite things I've ever seen. It's awesome. Erica on Jughead was like just the best. She's the best choice for that character. So it's. I don't know. There's no one in particular that I can think of. Yeah, there's a lot of talent out there, so it's kind of hard to narrow it down. Yeah, there's stuff coming up with artists that I'm just like, I want to tell you right now because it definitely fits the bill, but I can't. I just can't.
I saw you got a new print. Selling online, something about the universe.
Oh yeah. So my wife has started an online print company called The Pushpin, and she's got all these like awesome artists like Kate Beaton and Brian Lee O'Malley's going to join up, Jeff Lemire, and there's like these super high quality prints, and I wanted to do something that kind of reminded me of the infographics I did at the newspaper. And so I did the solar system graphic detailing the solar system, but like literally everything is wrong on it. Because I just, I like the idea of the people that buy it thinking it's right, and then getting it being like, God damn it. But also, yeah, it's like my favorite genre of humor is a thing presented as if it's correct when it's actually completely wrong. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. I don't bring them to shows, but you can get them online at The Pushpin.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Chip, we are way over on time.
Oh.
There's people waiting outside.
Eee.
But I want to thank you personally, and thank you on behalf of everyone here.
Yes, and thank you very much for doing this. Thank you.